On this week's Political Figure episode, we've got fill in your third-party candidate here. No, not that one. The one you like. Yeah, that one. Fill in your third-party candidate here was born around the founding of the United States and has ran in pretty much every election ever. Your third-party candidate here went to impressive university and has had a great career in good nonprofit. They have, however, little to no political background or experience, but that's great, right? That makes them an outsider. And despite having run in every presidential election pretty much ever, your third-party candidate here has won never. But this is the year, guys, right? If we all just get behind your third-party candidate here, they're totally gonna win this time. This is the time. Obviously, I'm doing this episode a little different because my comment sections as of late have made it painfully clear that some of y'all are in desperate need of a civics lesson. Now, before you get all upset and you start rage-banging comments out on your keyboard, I'm gonna ask you one thing. Watch the video all the way through, keeping in mind that you're probably here because you appreciate my opinion, the research and effort I put into forming it and sharing it with you. Not just me, but other progressive creators too, who you feel represent your opinions and perspectives on this app, like that Nick Powers guy and Cannon's Fodder. If you disagree with all of our perspectives on this subject, try to consume our content with that in mind. Remember that we want the same things that you want, and we spend monumental amounts of our time educating and advocating for those things. Now, I've done plenty of third-party profiles in the past. RFK's been done, Jill Stein's been done, Eugene Debs, Ralph Nader, Ross Perot. If you're interested in any of them, just type my username and their name and it should come up. Now, to be a third-party presidential candidate in our current political system, you have to be an arrogant, narcissistic prick. There's just no two ways about it. Yes, even your favorite one. Because first off, it is technically, theoretically, and mathematically impossible for a third-party candidate to win the presidency within our current system. Now, there's very realistic ways to change that system so they could be viable, but it's going to require a tad bit more work than bitching and a protest vote every 4 years. We all understand that the popular vote in the presidential election doesn't matter, right? We got that? Because if it did, we would have not had a Republican president since Daddy Bush. But in our current system, the popular vote doesn't matter. Electoral votes matter, and you need 270 of them to win the White House. Okay, so why can't a third party just get 270 electoral votes then? Well, not all votes are created equal. In fact, not even close. See, the more populated a state, the less electoral votes they get per capita. That's why a vote in Wyoming is worth over 3 times what a vote in California is, because Wyoming has 3 times more electoral votes per citizen than California. So right off the bat, your third party candidate here is already entering the race with both legs tied together because they've got the most distance to make up, and the easiest place to get votes is in more populated states, but those votes aren't worth nearly as much. But hey, Wyoming has 500,000 people, California has 40 million, New York 20 million, Florida 20 million. If you could just put up a solid showing in a few of those more populated states, you could still rack up tens of millions of votes just in a handful of states, and that's got to put you well on your way to the White House, right? Well, wrong again, because you don't get your share of the electoral votes from the state where you performed decent. You either win the state and you get them all, or you get nothing. So you could get 10 million votes in California and still get 0 electoral votes from it. Let's say your third-party candidate here manages to pull off winning the most votes in a few states. Most states don't actually have any requirement for the electors casting the electoral votes to vote for anybody specifically. And since the electors are often chosen by the parties, there's a good chance that they just wouldn't vote for your third-party candidate here, even if they did win the most votes in their state. But hey, what if they're a really populist candidate who speaks to people on both sides of the aisle? And they can pull most of the progressives and most of the libertarians, maybe grab some disaffected Republicans who aren't on the MAGA bandwagon. Let's say they manage to eke out more electoral votes than Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Which again, in our current system, mathematically basically impossible, but we're talking about unicorn farts at the end of the rainbow, so let's pretend. Now remember, there's 538 electoral votes total, and you need 270 of them to win. You can only hit that 270 by winning specific combinations of states, because remember, it's winner take all in these states, so you get all of their electoral votes. Now, we already know that at least 40% of Republicans are going to be voting Donald Trump, because, you know, that flavor aid is delicious. So if we're being realistic here, states like Texas, Tennessee, you know, probably not gonna happen, right? Then you have a whole lot of moderate Democrats that have no interest in your insert third-party candidate here, no matter how awesome you think that they are. So your chances in some New England states and some Rust Belt states ain't looking very good either. It's already going to be a tight race because you're fighting an uphill battle against establishment candidates. So if optimistically all of them perform pretty close to evenly, 538 divided by 3 is 179, and that's still a big gap to that 270. But hey, rainbow farts and unicorns, your third-party candidate here gets, let's say, 212 electoral votes. Well, they still didn't get their 270, so what now? Well, then it's an undecided election, and the House of Representatives gets to pick the president. Do you know what the House of Representatives is made up of? Democrats and Republicans. Republicans. Now, do you think that either Democrats or Republicans are going to pick your third-party candidate here? We already know that Republicans aren't a huge fan of democracy, and they control the House, and I'm not sure I'd hold out much hope that Democrats would rule in your favor either. Still doubtful, and you're hearing all this, and you're like, still, I feel like there's a chance. You're telling me there's a chance. Let's take a look historically. Anybody want to guess who the most successful third-party candidate in history was? Ralph Nader? No. Ross Perot? He can try again. It was Teddy Roosevelt. But wait, wasn't Teddy a Republican? Oh yeah, he was. Till he wasn't. See, he was a Republican vice president, and then the president died, and so he became the president, and then he got reelected as the Republican frontrunner for president. But Teddy didn't like playing by party rules, and him and the Republicans had a falling out, and Teddy decided to run for a non-consecutive third term under the Bull Moose Party. Now, this is an important context, because Teddy had a lot of things going for him. He had universal name recognition. He was an incredibly popular president, and he still had support of factions from his former Republican Party behind him. He had the best chance of any third-party candidate in U.S. history. He got a whopping 27% of the vote. That awarded him 88 Electoral College votes, and as a result, we ended up with Woodrow Wilson. Now, had Teddy not ran, Wilson still may have won, but I can certainly make an argument that Wilson was equally, if not more damaging than even Donald Trump. He was definitely at least equally extreme, and he flirted with fascism like he was a frat boy and it was a drunk freshman. And if that's not enough to convince you, your third-party candidate here probably won't even be on your goddamn ballot. I think RFK is on a whopping 4 ballots right now, and Stein is optimistic this year that she's gonna make all 50, but you know, I'll believe it when I see it, because she hasn't pulled that off in the past. Now, I can't tell you how to vote, and if you want to do your third-party vote because you believe a protest vote is the best way to make your voice heard, then okay, I guess. I just beg in that case that you vote down ballot. But if you're like, oh no, they can actually win if we just all get behind them and do this and that, no, they can't. No, they won't. And you continuing to say that is dangerous.
I'm still not voting for Trump. Why do people keep saying that a third-party vote is a vote for Trump?
Well, that's because more or less it is. Remember, Republicans don't really compete in the popular vote anymore, so they are focused completely on the Electoral College. And they know that their politicians and their policies are really unpopular, so they can't really go around touting those in the swing states that they need to win the electoral vote, because people aren't flocking to the party. So their only path to victory is siphoning off would-be votes from their only realistic opponent. And the best way to do that is to get the lean Democrat people to vote for somebody other than the Democrat. Which is why RFK's biggest individual donor, Timothy Mellon, just so happens to be Trump's biggest individual donor, and the same guy who funded the PAC that paid for RFK's Super Bowl ad. If the guy who's thrown $16 million at Trump's campaign has also thrown $20 million at RFK's campaign, he clearly understands that a vote for RFK for them is just as good as a vote for Trump, and so should you.
Okay, but the system never changes, and I'm sick of voting for the lesser of two evils. All you're doing is complaining. What's your solution?
Well, here's the solution, again, and please listen closely. You vote in the primaries. A third of the people who vote in the general election show up to the primary. You can't bitch about having candidates on the November ballot you don't like when you never showed up to the primaries to put candidates you do like on the goddamn ballot. And all the primaries, because they have them all the way down to the ballot, with the exception of Donald Trump, people don't just start out as president. You can't just expect the candidates you want to show up at the finish line. You need to start voting them in at the starting line, and the starting line is local races and state races. They need to build connections and support and name recognition so they have a viable chance at president someday. Which means you also need to vote for people in the down ballot, and I mean all the way down. You need to vote for everybody. School boards, state reps, and senators, not just the sexy federal races. Because those people have way more effect on your life than the president ever will, and those are the races where future presidents get their start. Then you need to vote for ballot referendums and initiatives, because that's where you're going to get ranked choice voting, so you can vote for your third-party candidate without throwing your vote away. That's where you're going to get your state to sign up for the Interstate Popular Vote Compact, so we can do away with the Electoral College, and maybe your third party has a little bit more of a chance of getting into the White House. And then finally, when it comes to choices between people you don't like, you need to vote for the one that's going to do the least harm, put the least obstacles in your way to eventually get the candidates and the policies you do want on the ballots. Yeah, sure, Joe Biden sucks in a lot of ways, and it's really super frustrating for progressives like us who don't feel represented. But remember, it was Donald Trump's SCOTUS picks that overturned Roe. How much progress do you think we'll make on getting politicians and policies to represent us if Donald Trump gets to pick Judge Clarence Thomas and Judge Alito's replacements? Think shit sucks now? Why don't you see what happens when we put another Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett on the bench that'll sit there for another 40 fucking years? But hey, that's probably not that big of a deal in reality, because if the guy who wrote Kim Jong-un love letters and almost started World War III with Iran gets back in power, I'm sure Fallout will become a documentary before too long anyway. A lot of the changes we want to see, guys, are not as far off path as they feel. While it's easy to get disheartened and feel hopeless in the day-to-day, remember that there's more AOCs and Jasmine Crockett's and Bernie Sanders every election, and they are having bigger and bigger impacts and mainstreaming the ideas that we want to see mainstreamed. Believe it or not, we are making progress. Our voices are being heard. But one wrong step and we can fuck that up right now and set us back decades, maybe permanently. So don't stop asking for more. I'm not telling you to not be pissed and not be frustrated and not voice that. But be smart, be pragmatic, and don't vote for the guy who's getting more campaign funding from Donald Trump's biggest donor than Donald Trump is. All right, I love you guys. I empathize, and we are all suffering through this together. Just let's work at it together to make that suffering last the shortest amount of time we possibly can.